Back again for another video. On today's topic, we'll be talking about approval versus validation. Now, people seem to interplay these two together, thinking that they are synonymous, but they're not. They're very different, especially when it comes to the dealings between men and women. Now, there's a such thing that we have heard floating around, very much so, that is called female validation and female approval. Those are two different things, no different than male approval and male validation. The reason why they're different, just to start off, is because it comes from a point of origin. To validate something or to approve of something. To validate is to back up its existence, to prove it to be true, to support it being true. To approve of something means that it's to see fit, it's to see it as appropriate, it's to push it forward as something that's good to do, I guess. There's a lot of ways to put it. So in regards to validation and approval, once again, they're very, very different. But why I bring this topic up is because one is very different than the other. Male approval, female approval slash validation. And the reason why they're different is because of their purpose. Male approval and validation is to push forward society. It's for the purpose of why man exists. It isn't for really anything else. We approve things because we see them fit as being part of the structure that we are creating in regards to our purpose in this world. No matter what kind of man you are or what background you come from or any of those things, that's generally the truth. And when it comes to validating things, that means that we are checking things over and we are seeing that they are fit to go with what we assume to be is the correct path, or we know to be the correct path, in regards to, once again, our purpose and our reason for being, versus why women do it. This is very different because women generally operate on a choosing path rather than a selection path. And because that is most of the things that they do is through the lens of choosing, you have to also assume that the validation and the approval is through choosing. This is the reason why shaming language is a thing, because it's a disapproval based on what they choose to be valid. Right? Because that's their sphere of influence, that's their sphere of authority. But it is not this same sphere of authority when it comes to men. Men, we operate on a different level of authority, so therefore that sphere has nothing to do with us. But yet and still, there are men who are geared, who are motivated, who are moved by female approval and female validation. But why? Why are they moved? Well, we know the answer very well. Because once again, this is the equivalent of having a battery put in your back. When a woman approves and validates something because she chooses to in regards to you, you can't always assume that that's necessarily because of you being the man, to put it in so many words. You can more than likely, especially in a gynocratic system, assume that this is nothing but a ploy for a woman to upvote or downvote what she wants to see happen or not happen. This is, like I said, no different than the shaming language tactics. It's just the other side of the coin to that. Her approval and her validation of whatever a man's doing or whatever a female is doing. We see it all the time. This is no different than the pick-me arguments. This is no different than the hyena arguments. These are the factions that stand against each other in their approval and their validation or disapproval and their invalidation of the other's existence. This is how they operate. But once again, men, we don't participate necessarily in those systems because it's either you're above the gynocracy or you're a pawn in the gynocracy, and that's the difference between a true man and a simp, right? The other types of men, they kind of fall in and out of those categories, right? But for the most part, when it comes to the female validation, the true man doesn't have any use for it. I mean, it's good for motivating factors because that's what a woman is supposed to do. She's supposed to validate your purpose, meaning that she's supposed to come behind you and she's supposed to give those words of support. She's supposed to give those words of encouragement. She's supposed to give all these words that would help you and motivate you to continue to do what she knows that you are doing is correct because she supports your purpose, right? But once again, there are other men who are geared towards these things just the same, but it's more from the lens of solipsism when it comes to the gynocracy giving validation and approval to certain men. This is the reason why Derrick Jenks got famous, right? Because women were giving him the validation, they were validating the words that he was saying, and they were giving the approval of what he was saying. But once again, other men, which are outside of the gynocracy, stood up against these things because we stand above those things. Therefore, the validation and the approval that the women were giving was also invalid according to the structure that we know to be correct, and that is anything that goes against the gynocracy, pretty much. So in regards to how these systems work, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's nothing really complicated, but once again, I'm just here to give you the fundamentals of how these things exist and why they operate the way they do. I don't think many people actually sit down and think about the interplays, because this is a very intangible thing, validation and approval. It's something that is expressed with words, sometimes actions, more times actions, actually, because people talk all day and people don't move, right? It's when people move on things and they support things with their presence, their money, their effort and energy that validates something or gives the approval of something. Remember, those two things are very separate though. But one thing that has to be in place in regards to the validation and approval paradigms, and that's authority. Think about it. If you had a company and you had employees and you said, well, I think I want to put a new window in front of the store because maybe there's not a window there and you want one there. And you tell your employees that, this is going to happen. Regardless of what they say in the words of validating that is a good thing to do or the approval that they agree with your decision, it doesn't matter because you're the one who holds the authority of whether that happens or not. So ultimately, as the authoritative figure in that store that you own, your approval, your validation means the most out of everyone else's, even if they disagree. This is a key point to the explanation that I'm giving here in regards to why men should operate in the levels of authority, because there are going to be people who rally against your existence and your purpose in life. There are going to be people who disagree with you. There are going to be people who don't believe in anything that you have to say or that you want to do in life, right? But you have to remain the authority over yourself, because if you allow someone else's validation or approval to reign so much in your life, you lose the authority over the importance of the things that you think need to happen. This is no different than the things that we see going on in the gynocracy, because most times these men that operate within the gynocracy or around it, maybe they orbit it, whatever the case may be, they are moved by the validation and the approval of the women. So therefore, they have no authority over their lives. They seem to think so because they have autonomy. Yeah, but do you really? Probably not, if you really think about it, because your existence and the things that you choose to do with your life are pivoted off of someone else's validation and approval of what you're doing. Is that any way to claim yourself to be autonomous? No, not really. I mean, granted, of course, there are things such as laws, rules, and regulations that we have to follow in this country, but we are still able to remain autonomous even while following those things, because they do not validate or invalidate our existence as people who can make their own decisions based on what they think is best in their own lives. But like I said, there's a difference, even though that's an authority structure, such as states, counties, governments, they're authority figures. And they do have some level of say in regards to the quality of life that we experience wherever you may be. But once again, this is very different because they don't have ultimate authority over you. When you are geared by the validation and you are geared by the approval of someone else, you lose your individual authority over yourself. And I don't think a lot of people pay attention to this. We have social media, we have Instagram, Facebook, we have Twitter, we have TikTok now. We have all these things where numbers are flooding into certain videos because these are people's way to validate or invalidate, because not all press is good press, right? There are such things as downvotes on certain videos. There are certain aspects where people leave comments that are seemingly invalidating whatever the content is that is presented, in which they're leaving the comment on. But nonetheless, if that person continues to create things in the way that they see fit, none of those downvotes, none of those approvals, none of the comments that are left have any effect on this person's life, because they don't live their lives by the validation or invalidation or approval or disapproval of others. They are the authority figure in their own lives in regards to what they see fit in their own production and creation. Once again, this is what I charge men to do, because it is very important that you are doing what you are doing because this is what you see fit, not because of what someone else approves of. Because once you start living for the approval of someone else, or the validation of someone else, once again, you are not the authority figure in your life anymore. We might as well call you a simp, huh? But that's the truth of how things exist. Once again, I'm not here to dictate how you should live your life or say what is right or what is wrong. I'm just here to give you a direction and the fundamental understandings of how these things work. Once again, there are not many people who are willing to talk about these things. I've been doing it for video after video, long time after long time. You know what I'm saying? And I haven't changed my rhetoric a bit. Why? Because I am the authority in my life. But anyways, like, comment, and share. Check me out on Facebook. Check me out on Patreon. But until next time, this has been The Wolf in Made Clothes. May you have a good day. And of course, as you know, peace be with you.